Okay. So thank you for joining in. So this is the third session of the Artificial Intelligence for Good group here based in New York. So the idea is to, so this meetup is open to anyone who is interested in AI and application of AI and application AI for good. So it means for the environment, for for healthcare and so on. Before giving that presentation, I'll want to introduce you to the next two talks. One is going to be on February 2nd on advancing global food security with machine learning and Earth observations by Professor Anna Kerner from the University of Maryland of NASA. Okay, so it'll be a very interesting talk. You can sign up at the meetup. And in March 9, will be a talk by Professor Pierre Gentine from Columbia. His talk will be, can AI help us better project climate change? Challenges and opportunities for climate and data scientists. Okay? So, so this is for February and March, and you'll have like other speakers for the following months. And if there are any themes that are of interest to you, you can let me know. I can try to find speakers in your areas of interest. So today, the talk is about GANs and Deepfakes. Right? So the title of the presentation is "These People Do Not Exist," and so I'm going to tell you about more about this. So this presentation is based on a report written by Club Praxis, right? And its members. Club Praxis is a French-American think tank. So it's a non-profit. They're all volunteers, are people like professionals based in the US or in France, and we tackle like public policy issues in all domains: healthcare, the cybersecurity, the environment, and so on. So here we recently released a report that I think I've shared on the meetup group that you can find online at clubpraxis.com on deepfakes and how to regulate deepfakes. Okay. So some of my co-authors are online, and Jan Kotelem is also online too. He's the president of Club Praxis. So let me start. So maybe I'll take maybe 20 minutes, half an hour maximum to go over what it is and what are our proposals, and we can open it to Q&As. Okay. If you have any questions, maybe, because it is recorded, so maybe I might not interrupt my presentation, but you can like write down your questions in the chat. The Google Meet has a messaging, and you can write the questions there, and you can like discuss them during the Q&A. Okay. So the outline is so I'll present what are the GANs and deepfakes. Then we talk about the proposals and the Q&As. Okay. This is the cover of the report that you can find on this link too. Okay. So I think on the background, I think if I set it up correctly, you should see the same cover. So a little bit of history of GANs. So GANs, what are GANs? So GANs are generative adversarial networks. Right? So I'll go over how they work very briefly. So this presentation is not technical at all, but you understand where it's coming from. So they are. It's a model which is part of the family of deep learning models. Right? It's so deep learning is a branch of machine learning, which is part of AI. So 8 years ago, in 2014, so a researcher called Jan Goodfellow, he was a student at Stanford, and I think he did his PhD at the University of Montreal, and he came up with these GANs. So it was probably part of his research. Today, I believe he's probably the head of AI research at Apple. Right? So he's been a very successful researcher. So 2014, A couple of years after, so usually in machine learning, all these models are open source. So, like traditionally researchers share their code, their models, their papers. So everything is in the public domain. So everybody can look at his source code and replicate the model and enhance it. So what has happened in the past 8 years. 2 years after 2016, so there are a lot of like mobile apps, right? Already apps for phones. One app allowed you to upload your face on your phone and look at yourself aged by 10, 20 years, 30 years. Wonder why would you want to do that? But it is an application, an app that was available. And so a lot of like apps of photo manipulation. We'll see a few examples throughout the presentation. 2017, there was a startup called Lyrebird based in Canada. So you could record your voice, and the program will create a voice copy using text. Right? I'll show you a demo of this too. 2018, a deepfake with President Obama. I'll show you that later on too. 2018, there's a work of art also using GANs, and it was a group called like Obvious, I think, and they created what we call the piece of art. I think there might be like maybe 11 of them. It was called the Earl of Bellamy, the Count of Bellamy in French. It was even sold in auctions. I think at probably Sotheby's for over like I think $400,000. So something that they use. So they use some open source code and feed up some pictures of paintings and generated new paintings. Go over that. 2019, Huawei, which is a Chinese telecom company, it's kind of a bit for marketing, but did something quite interesting. They finalized a version of the Schubert. It's called like Unfinished Symphony. That's Symphony number 8 in B minor, and I'll go over that. 2019, there was a big deep fake targeting Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook at the time. That's called Meta, I believe. In 2019, language model used for natural language processing called GPT-3 was released, and I'll go over that too. And more recently, I think China is also a big round of experiment for deep fakes on mobile apps. I'll go over that. A very interesting quote, Yann LeCun, who is a Turing Award winner. So Turing Award is the equivalent of, you might know, is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computer science. So said about GANs, he called it the coolest idea in deep learnings in the last 20 years. So I think it's good to know what it is. So here on this page, it's very simple. So I won't go into all the models, but just look at what these models can do. So here on the left, you see. So this is done by the company called NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, they build chips for graphic cards, chips, and so on, and they build a lot of chips for AI and machine learning. So what you do with this model, you feed like a drawing. It could be a landscape, a drawing, like what you see here on the top, and then it produces a realistic picture. Right? So that picture this environment that doesn't have to exist, right? So just do that, and then they fill up all the colors with realistic rendering of this environment. Right? You can see application, for instance, for there's a lot of CGI in movies, right, or games, right? You can see, okay, you draw a picture of a mountain, and then the program will draw you a realistic mountain. These are faces. So you saw it, I think, in the poster of the Meta presentation. So I used that. So I said, these people do not exist. So that's true. These people do not exist, right? And there's a website you can go. The website is called This Person Doesn't Exist. So these are all faces of people generated by GANs. right? It's called like a version of GAN called like style GANs, right? So the model is fed like real pictures and generates like fake pictures, right? And later on, we'll see that this can be a problem, right? I don't know if you have ever accepted on Facebook, on LinkedIn, people that you don't know. Some of them might not be like true, real people. Right? So these are like application of GANs. It has a positive application, like good application. So here, this is what we call like style transfer using a version of GANs called Cycle GAN. So you enter, you feed the model a photograph, right? A picture of like this, like a field, and then it transforms the picture into like a Monet painting, Van Gogh or Cézanne, right? So it is quite interesting, right? Like a style of Monet, Van Gogh, and so on. So of course you have to feed the model like many like Van Gogh paintings, Monet paintings. It learns the style of these painters, right? And then you can modify the pictures. It can be used for abstract painting. So I think it's like if I were an artist, I will look into that. I think it's like quite fantastic, the kind of things that you could do. So this is like the portrait, like for portraits. So here, these are art. So you generate art and you can make money out of it. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the Earl of Bellamy, the Count of Bellamy. He's kind of from a group of called the French Collective, Obvious. That's done in 2018. So what they did, they used some source code, open source code, to generate these portraits. I think there were like 11 of them. You can go to their website. It was interesting because at the time there was a bit of discussion about who should get the money, because the person who wrote the code, right, as open source code, said maybe I should get the copyright of these paintings because I wrote the code to generate these paintings, right? But at the end they agreed that French collectives, they get the copyright of these paintings and get to keep the money, because even though you write the code, but they still fed the code, the program with the paintings and so on, right? So it's not that the person who wrote the code really created the paintings. I don't know, maybe it's not very clear, but the signature of this painting is a mathematical formula. I mean, you might guess a little bit, and it's not super clear, but you can go Google it on the internet. In fact, it's signed with the objective function of the GAN. So usually this machine learning model, they maximize or minimize some objective functions. And here you can recognize it a little bit. It's written like mean, max, of log, of it's usually like an entropy function of log of y minus something. So this is so they've been interested. This is kind of tongue in cheek, but still someone spent money on it, right? This is quite interesting. So this is so here we saw application of art. So here the one on the left is 12 famous portrait paintings. Animated with deep learning. So this is called like deep nostalgia. So I'm going to run it for you, and maybe I won't do the whole thing, but you can get the idea. Okay. Recognize Frida Kahlo here. So here you have something a bit of this style, but these are historical portraits, so historical figures, and they can animate. So let me start here. Queen of England. recognize the portrait too. So this is so these have like good like interesting application, right? But you have also like the risk of manipulation, disinformation, right? So this is the deep fake, the combination of deep learning and fake. So here it is an application. So here, so let's you might have seen it before.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. May sound
So this is pretty good, and so it was like in 2018, and this one was also so there was, you know, I mean, before the election, right, there's a lot of complaints about deep fake news and so on, that Facebook not doing enough. So some activists made that video.
Imagine this for a second. One man with total control of billions of people's stolen data, all their secrets, their lives, their futures. I owe it all to Spectre. Spectre showed me that whoever controls the data controls the future.
I wish I could tell you that we're going to be able to stop all interference, but that just wouldn't be realistic. There will always be bad actors in the world, and we can't prevent all governments from all interference. But even without our employees directly involved in the sales, we can...
Imagine this for a second.
Now,
one man with total control of billions of people's stolen data, all their secrets, their lives, their futures. I owe it all to Spectre. Spectre showed me that whoever controls the data controls the future. Imagine this for a second.
And then I think after this, Facebook started to take deepfakes seriously on their website. So I think it.
We're entering an era in which.
So this is the only technical slide of this presentation. So it gives you a flavor of how it works. So there are like two neural networks, one called the generator and one called the discriminator. Okay, and they fight. So they are like kind of adversaries. That's why it's called like generative adversarial networks. So two networks which are like adversaries. So one try to generate like faces, the fake faces of people who don't exist. The discriminator try to tell the difference between fake faces and real faces. Right? So the discriminator is fed some real pictures, right? So it knows what is a real picture, and the generator is trying to, from random noise, try to generate like fake faces, right? And the discriminator try to can tell, you know, using its database of real pictures, can tell if it is a real or fake, and tells this to the generator. Okay, each time you send a picture, tells the generator it is fake or not fake. And the generator is learning, is trying to improve. Say, okay, discriminator say is not is still fake, so let me try to fool the discriminator again. So it's going to change the weights in the neural networks to get a better picture. Right? So he's doing this like multiple times till the step when the generator face, the fake face cannot be told apart from the real face. Yes, this is that how the GAN is working. This is a slide, but this is quite interesting. This audio generation. So we saw like pictures. Audio generation is not that much. They don't use GANs that much. There's more like more deep learning. So here, this is quite impressive. So I mentioned Lyrebird, that Canadian startup. Now I think it has been it's a division. It has been bought by a company called Descript. So what it does is that you can record. You record your voice, right, once, or you can record from, let's say, read a text, and then the program can use can read a text with the tone of your voice. Okay, so that can be very useful for people, for instance, who do like voiceover, right, on documentary and so on. Then you can let the computer do it, right? But the computer will have your voice. Right? It has multiple application, right? Or you want to read a book to your kids, and you just put the computer, but the computer will have your voice. Right? So let me show you this demo. Just a few.
By the end of this video, you will be able to type whatever you like in here, and the program will generate an audio recording of your voice saying what you typed. By the end of this video, you will be able to type whatever you like in here, and the program will generate an audio recording of your voice saying what you typed. Let's try this.
So you saw what happened, right? So the first part was his real voice, and second part, he wrote a text, and the computer was reading the text with the same voice. And this is impressive. There's commercial application. I think Descript is selling this as a service for voiceover. There was an example of a cybercrime committed because of a fake voice. So the CEO of a British company was convinced to authorize a transfer of $200,000 because someone a computer asked him on the phone to give the authorization. Last part, I think this is that application of audio. So I mentioned Huawei, of the unfinished symphony of Franz Schubert, right? So Franz Schubert, so there's a symphony number 8, B minor, and he completed only the first and second movement, right? And he didn't complete, so we don't know. Maybe he had syphilis, or maybe some health reason. We don't really know why he didn't finish. There's some fragments of the third and the fourth movement, but so they call it the unfinished symphony. And what Huawei did was to use AI and the composer. So there's a human composer. So it's not 100% AI, but Lucas Cantor, I think he was a famous composer. So the AI was to learn the first and second movement of the symphony and created some melodies for the third and fourth symphony, for the third and fourth movement. Okay? And Lucas Cantor put all these melodies together. Right? So there's a bit of human intervention, but most of the melodies were composed by the AI. And the whole piece was played by an orchestra. Right? So it was not played by computers, so by the musicians of the English session orchestra. So I'm going to play. I'm not going to play the human part. I'm going to play the end, which is only like AI based. Right? So So that's pretty good, right, for an AI.
By the end of this video, you will be able to type
text generation. So this is you might have read of the news in the news. So this is what we call a language model. So it's used for natural language processing. The model is called GPT-3 for a company called OpenAI. Now I believe the GPT-3 is licensed by Microsoft. So if you are a customer of Microsoft, you can use this model. So these are called like large language models because they are trained on tons of data. Right? So here like 8 million web pages. The model has 1.5 billion parameters. Today, the more advanced models they use like tens of billions of parameters, even more. So they're very, very large models. And what these models can do, they can do anything for natural language processing. You know, like autocomplete or task, or grammar checking, or text generation. So here it's an example of text generation. And so the concern about this is that GPT-3 can write fake news. And here, so here we see an example of this. So what you do, you enter a prompt, right? You say, okay, this is like Miley Cyrus was caught shoplifting from Abercrombie and Fitch on Hollywood Boulevard today. And then the AI completes the story by itself, right? So the GPT-3 writes, the 19-year-old singer was caught on camera being escorted out of the store by security guards. The singer was wearing a black hoodie with the labeled blurred lines on the front and fashion police on the back. Okay. The singer was also wearing a pair of black rimmed glasses, a black jacket, black jeans, and black sandals. This is relatively is very realistic. Right? The trick is that GPT-3 in fact generates many plausible texts, right? And somehow humans choose this more for marketing, so they choose the most plausible one. So some of them don't make sense, but they're getting better and better, right? So you can imagine that some bad actors might want to use this to write like fake news about about any topics, right? And then so you need and put them in posts in Facebook and so on. So this is a problem, right? Because and as I said earlier, many of these models are open source, so everybody can run these models. So you might not have the computing power to do it. But some of the GPT-3, you need to be a big company to do it. You cannot do it at home. But for many other, like the GANs models, you can do it at home on your personal computer. So there's some. So this is like start to be widespread. There's one application, for instance. In France, there's one journalist wants to, I don't know if he's going to do it or not. He wants to have a new TV show where he's going to interview, to have fictional interviews. He's going to interview deceased personalities, right? You saw earlier, right? These photos of of historical people, so people who are dead long time ago. You can animate them, but now the technique is so good that you can make them speak. I mean, like Obama. So you can interview, J.F. Kennedy, and he can answer questions to you, right? So we talk about all these apps. The historical figures that we saw, the portraits, it was using something called deep nostalgia. And you have websites today. You can enter like a picture of your grandparents or whoever you want, and that picture is going to animate by itself. This is Wombo. It's an app based in Canada. You can upload a picture of yourself, of a friend, of anyone, and that picture, that picture is going to sing a song, so lip sync of a song. Right? You put one picture, you put one song, and the picture will animate, so it looks as if that person is singing. Right? And of course, it's not difficult to imagine that you have also bad applications. So so what is called deep porn. So the actress Scarlett Johansson has been a target of this, right? So they put her face on on porn actors or actresses. It can be used for fraud, right? So we have you can use for fraud. You can impersonate someone. You can create fake accounts on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I think there's a very well-known example of a woman based in DC who got connected to many like famous politicians in the DC area, and that person was not real, right? It's a fake person. And personally, I've seen it myself too. Like sometimes you have people who usually they put like controversial news, and you see that they have no friends, or they don't have schools, or no work experience, and you think that probably it's a fake. So the last few minutes, I'm going to talk. I mean, the Q&As, you can talk more about what to do. Some of my friends and colleagues are online. But what we can do, we can try to educate, right? So try to people have to know what are deepfakes. That there's a risk of being deepfakes in the social media, and to know maybe how to how to recognize them. Encourage fact checking. Right, so someone who looks realistic but says something that doesn't make sense, maybe it should be fact-checked. I don't believe what you see necessarily. Watermarking of documents, so if documents are some documents, photos, videos, authentic or not. And now people work a lot on detection algorithms. Right, so there's algorithms to try to detect deepfakes. It's not easy to do, right? So there's something called the deepfake challenge. I think Facebook and some other companies sponsored the competition. So the challenge was to write a program to try to detect deepfakes. So what they did, so they had a database of real videos and fake videos, and then anyone could use these videos to train machine learning models, try to detect these models. So I think from in sample with the training data, they were able to categorize the deepfakes accurately at the rate of 80% accuracy. But out of sample for pictures, that videos that the model has never seen, it falls to 65%. So 65% means they're still wrong 35% of the time, right? So it's still not perfect, right? So let me skip this. It's just like that. You start to see deepfakes everywhere. You Google deepfakes, you put deepfakes in the news, you always find personalities being victims of deepfakes, and all over the world, not only the US, in India, I think recently there was a case like that. So the proposals, I'll go over some of them. We had 12 proposals in the report. I can refer to the report. The first one is to make people more responsible. If they know that putting deepfakes out there, we should require them to say, not to say a note, put a note that this is a deepfake picture, deepfake content, right? So of course, the good actors will do that. Maybe the hackers in Russia wouldn't care, but at least for people who who care about the law and the rules, they should put a note about this. Encourage the platforms. So what are the platforms? Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and so on, to have tools to reduce the impact of deepfakes. And I think we've seen some of it already. So for instance, to reduce the virality of fake content, so that doesn't allow you, for instance, I think WhatsApp, you have this feature. You cannot like distribute videos too many times, right? At least it tries to slow down the sharing, right? On the reposting, right? You cannot repost, the same contents too many times. They should develop like detection tools, right? So I mentioned the deepfake challenge. So developing the techniques, right, to classify these contents. Some recent studies, I think, I think earlier this year, I think an article published in the Academy of the National Proceeding of the Academy of Science showed that, in fact, humans, if you take the wisdom of crowd, the average of human is as good as an algorithm to detect deepfakes. Right? So programs that still have a long way to go. Okay, let me skip the legal. I mean, just a few ideas because some of it is more like specific to Europe, but in general, the laws, applicable laws, are a bit everywhere. It's a bit of a patchwork of different legal environments. Right? Some of it is like freedom of the press. Some of it is about to respect privacy. And in the US, you have state law, you have federal law. So it's It's a bit complicated to navigate. So you have a victim of deepfake. You might not know exactly what to do about it, to who you should complain, right? Ideally, you should be able to complain to Google, Facebook, and so on, and they should be responsible enough to remove the content or maybe tell you who posted these things. But sometimes they might not do it, right? So, and also the platforms, they try also to do. I think they, especially we saw the fake videos for Mark Zuckerberg. So they really take fake videos, deepfakes seriously. But each platform, they have their own rules, right? So it's a patchwork of rules, as it can be inconsistent. And this is yes, here. So this is what we call soft law. So it's like no real laws. They're the laws that the platforms try to impose on themselves and on their users, but they are not uniform, right? And it's not really sustainable because there is no enforcement. There's no enforcement that you get expelled from Twitter, right, or from Facebook and so on. But there's no criminal or civil prosecution. Okay. So I think I took a lot of time, so I want to stop. So I think there's some initiative in Europe. They have an AI regulatory project that might become a law, and they have something called the Digital Service Act. It's more like European specific. I think the US is starting to be to lag behind, or it's done state by state. Maybe California. I think there's Virginia might have a law against deep fake or deep porn or revenge porn. I think in Virginia. So it's also a patchwork, but it's nothing at the federal level. We have to keep in mind all these these big tech firms. They have a very strong lobbies in DC, and they're very powerful, and they have a lot of money. So that might explain why it's relatively slow. So I'm going to stop my presentation here and to stop recording. Okay, and